Good morning and welcome to AM Agenda. At the start of this election campaign, just a couple of days ago, Tony Abbott said he would make no changes to the Fair Work Act. Today, reports in Sydney's Daily Telegraph newspaper that his savings measures announced just yesterday will necessitate exactly that.
And the story is wrong, simply wrong. This is a savings measure and it will be achieved by amending the Electoral Act. It does not require any change to the Fair Work Act.
So who is right, the report or Mr Abbott? Joining me to discuss this and the other matters of the day on the election campaign trail, the Parliamentary Secretary for Employment, Jason Clare, with me in the Sky News Centre. Hi, Jason.
G'day, Kieran. How are you?
Very well, thank you. And in Adelaide, we've got the Shadow Parliamentary Secretary for Climate Change, Senator Simon Birmingham. Senator Birmingham, thank you for joining us this morning. I want to ask you, first of all, has Tony Abbott once again been caught up in this work choices discussion where he wants the debate elsewhere? The government says he would have to change the Fair Work Act to implement the savings announced just yesterday.
Well, good morning, Kieran, Jason, listeners, viewers. Look, Kieran, the issue you raise really is one that Tony's addressed already this morning, and the allegations of the Labor Party are plain wrong. The Liberal Party, the Coalition, is quite confident that we can make the $25 million of savings by making unions pay for their own ballots, their own expenses, by changing the Electoral Act. That's how this issue will be sorted. The simple fact is the allegation is wrong. We can address this issue, make those savings that simply make unions pay for their own costs by changing the Electoral Act. That's all that's required here, and this is just another furphy, another smokescreen by the Labor Party trying to keep the debate on a topic where they want it, when the reality is that we've made it very clear, and Tony has made it clear from day one, that Australians' workplace relations framework will not change under a coalition government.
OK, Jason Clare,
That's
your
it,
response to
full
that? A furphy, according to Senator Birmingham.
Well, Simon's wrong and Tony's wrong as well. You cannot do this. This is the legal advice that I've received. You cannot do this without amending Section 464 of the Fair Work Act. So what the Daily Telegraph has said on its front page is true. On Monday, Tony Abbott said he would never amend the Fair Work Act, and then today it's revealed in the papers that he would have to amend the Fair Work Act. This is all more proof that you can't trust what Tony Abbott says on work choices. It's like trusting Dracula not to bite you. This bloke is addicted to it, he can't help himself, and it's more proof that he would amend the Fair Work Act. This is a provision, by the way, the sort of provision that John Howard put in place when he was Prime Minister, designed to make sure that ballots are run fairly and properly. So if Tony Abbott wants to rip this out, it means he's going further than John Howard did on work choices.
But as Simon said, the Fair Work Act does make provision for other ballot agents to provide for these industrial ballots, not just the Electoral Commission. So why couldn't the unions just organise it themselves with an authorised agent, or pay for the AEC to do it themselves? Well, why should the taxpayer
they could do it through another agency, but through the Fair Work Act, what it says is that the Commonwealth will pay for the ballots that are conducted through the AEC. If you want to stop that, you need to amend the Fair Work Act. The issue here is that Tony Abbott said he wouldn't amend the Fair Work Act. Now we've got proof today that he would, just more proof that you cannot trust Tony Abbott when it comes to work choices.
Aren't you doing exactly what Simon Birmingham accuses you of, and that is finding anything you can to keep the focus on this issue?
Well, it's not us. It's the Daily Telegraph has proved this point today. The issue here is whether you can trust Tony Abbott. He said on the 7:30 report, don't trust everything I say, trust what's written down, that's the gospel truth. He wrote a book, Kieran, and the book said he thought work choices was good for Australian workers.
OK, well, let's hear what the Prime Minister had to say. Julia Gillard was on Radio 2UE just a short time ago.
The problem for Mr Abbott is if you can't trust him to keep a promise about the Fair Work Act for 24 hours, how can you trust him not to reintroduce the worst aspects of work choices? I mean, I think Tony Abbott gets all of his words mangled when he talks about work choices, when he says he's not going to bring work choices back. I think he gets all of his words mangled because the truth is he believes in work choices. He should just say that, be upfront about it.
Simon Birmingham, you want the focus, the Coalition wants to focus on issues like debt and deficit. We saw that yesterday with those savings measures announced. But doesn't this mean, the story in today's newspapers, doesn't it mean another campaign day dominated by an issue that you don't want discussed, or at least dominating the election trail?
Well, Kieran, we will spend today, as we have up till now, prosecuting our message on our terms. Now, in relation to workplace relations, we will continue to make it very, very clear that Australians' workplace entitlements will not change under a coalition government. That is the agreement. That's what we're putting on the table to the Australian people, and it's what Tony has said from day one. The Labor Party can try to have a sideline debate that tries to drag union balloting as some form of key part of people's workplace arrangements. People won't buy that. They know when we say we're not going to change their workplace arrangements what we mean, and it's not about the structure of union balloting or a saving that can be made there. But if Julia Gillard wants to talk about keeping one's word, let's look at her words from the first few days of the campaign trail. She promised right up front that for every dollar of new expenditure during this campaign, there would be savings offsets. Yesterday she made a few $1 million of extra expenditure on her traineeship program, but not $1 of savings was outlined. Contrast that with the coalition, $46 billion worth of savings identified to date, because we know that the first responsibility of government is to manage the books carefully, to make sure that we're not profligate or wasteful with taxpayers' dollars.
Don't you think
and that is the real contrast in this election.
It's proving hard to shake, isn't it? Does this go back to Tony Abbott not being able to rule out any changes to the IR system, and that it allows the government greater scope to be able to keep this in the headlines?
Well, Kieran, not at all. We will continue to run our campaign on our terms. And indeed, the story today, if you really want to, provides an opportunity for us to talk about savings. The story comes from a $25 million saving, part of our $46 billion worth of savings that have been identified. It's a very small part of those savings, but nonetheless it's important because it shifts the cost from taxpayers back to unions. Unions who seem to have plenty of money to spend on political advertising during election campaigns when they want to. So our message will stay on savings, on responsibility, and on the fact that Labor